Hey everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Agent Spotlight. Today, I've got with me someone who's a fantastic closer, a well-esteemed person within Symmetry Financial Group, Lauren Pietsch. And I'm really glad that she's come on board to just talk to me about what's been going on with herself and her business. And yeah, before I go into some of the questions I've got for you, Lauren, it'll be good to find out just a bit more about you. How long have you been in the industry for? What type of leads are you preferring? Life insurance, mortgage protection, etc.
Yeah, so I have been licensed for about 2.5 years. I started in a fairly part time capacity, like very, very part time. So I actually started on digital Razor Ridge leads when I first came into the industry because I needed the flexibility. I transitioned full time a little over a year ago. I'm an agency owner now with Symmetry. So I've been working full time just over a year. And I, to be honest, I've been going back and forth between digital to call in, to mail in. I've been a little bit all over the place, but one thing that has stayed consistent is I usually have two streams of leads coming in. So I always am supplementing with digital leads on top of my regular lead flow. Currently, I'm working pretty much only digital leads, but I go back and forth a little bit, just depending on the day,
Yeah, no, I
depending on
love
the
that.
lead.
Love that. Yeah, tell me a bit more about your story then. So, what were you doing before? You've been doing this for 2.5 years, went part time. What made you jump into the life insurance industry?
Yeah, so I was working in the automotive industry. I worked as a finance manager at a dealership, and was really just, I had a very lucrative position. I did very well, but I needed the balance. I was tired of not being able to take a vacation and spend the money that I was making. So I had an introduction into the financial services world as, an investment agent, if you will. And I decided that that wasn't the realm I wanted to go. And then I kind of stumbled upon Symmetry and I was like, man, I can do this part time while I'm still doing my other thing until I get myself up and running.
Yeah,
Because it's a big income to replace. That's basically, I was like, okay, this is the opportunity that I was looking for to kind of transition. And while I was working, 60 to 70 hours a week, having the flexibility of those digital leads was crucial because I could be answering texts on my phone while I was working, knowing that I was making a transition out.
brilliant. Wow, 60, 70 hours a week. That is crazy.
Too much. It's
Yeah,
too much.
way too much. But I've been there before as well. I used to work as a research analyst in investments, so I know the struggle of long hours, and then you're looking, 3 years down the line. What does that look like? And it just looks like more long hours.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's not that appealing.
it's really not. The money's good in the short term, but once you realize that, money doesn't really mean everything, it's
Yeah,
like, "Okay, what am I gonna do with this if I can't spend it?"
exactly. No, exactly right. So talk to me about that transition then. So how did you're obviously working long hours. You obviously got a lot of time and you're dedicating to your day-to-day job. How did you balance that between getting digital leads? Was it you just started with 5 leads a week, or and then were texting in between the day, or did you block out time during your day to contact?
Yeah, so I was not very good at blocking that time, honestly. I was very sporadic at best while working it.
Okay.
I just didn't have the time and I didn't have a set schedule either. So I was working different hours every day. And if I was supposed to get off at 6, sometimes that turned into 8 p.m. So I had a really difficult time actually scheduling appointments with people and being able to commit to them if it wasn't first thing in the morning when I knew I wasn't at the office. So I will say it was a very, very rocky road, but what it did teach me is those leads were a cost of education. I learned a lot just being able to have those conversations and realizing that you have to get to them quickly because if you don't, they're literally onto the next person who's going to help them. So I lost a few sales because of it. They had already bought by the time that I had got to them. Quick engagement, but then to the actual close, I was not very good at balancing in the beginning. It was probably the worst, but it was truly a time constraint for me more than anything.
Awesome. So how did you solve that? Did you just go part-time in your day-to-day job, or?
No, I got myself fired. Well, not really. I was making a transition out and I said, I wanted to cut my hours back. They agreed and that was great. And then 2 weeks later, they told me that they basically found my replacement. They weren't going to be bringing them in part time, but rather full time, or I could keep my position. So at that point, I took that as my cue to step back. And within one day, I was full time here. So
Just like,
in that time, I had learned a lot and I had been confident enough with what I was doing, even though I'd written some policies. I hadn't sold a ton of policies, but I had written policies.
yeah,
I was confident enough that like, okay, now if I actually put 40 hours a week to this, I can make a go of it. So
yeah, perfect. Wow, that's an amazing story.
I wasn't really fired, but I
Yeah,
chose to let
you
myself
chose to
be
leave.
fired.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was
you're like,
basically like, on my way out. I was like,
yeah,
okay,
it's
bye.
time, possibly time to go, but you tipped yourself over the edge,
Yep, yep,
which
yep.
makes sense. And like you said, you had worked on something on the background, so it wasn't that big a risk at that time. You didn't necessarily need that role. So with all that extra time, you said you have, you've got all this extra time. So how did you navigate the route in your journey as a life insurance agent? Did you just double down on buying leads? Did you see your numbers increase massively instantly, or did it take a bit more time to get the skill set dialed in?
So I still felt like I was starting out as a new agent, but I wasn't starting out on day one.
Hmm.
I had had probably about a year, a little over a year of practice, if you will, written some policies, been tuning in. I'd catch, recordings of calls and podcasts and stuff in my in between hours when I could listen on my long commute. I'd listen to calls. So by the time I transitioned in, I think I wrote 10,000 APV my first full-time month, which is not like stellar by any means, but most agents don't write 10,000 their first full-time month, right? So I would say that I knew that I had to put the work in. I had to replace income. There was no question about it. So for me, it was also learning to manage my schedule, which was very difficult because I went from like a very structured always working whenever clients were in front of me to suddenly I'm sitting at home, in my office. I'm like, "What do I do?" I'd pace my house, like, "What is going on?" Now I have an office, which I prefer my office. I get up in the morning and I go to the office, and I get out of my house, which is helpful.
Yeah,
Working those long hours, it's really hard to transition into that, like, home life working situation. It is not for me. I admire the people who can work from home, but I need a separation of my space for sure.
yeah, you're better than I am. I am in my house all day, every day, and I love it, to be fair. But I can understand you sometimes you need mentally just to be away from the chaos that can be at home, just to, you
Mm.
know, have a space that is dedicated just to work, and home is dedicated just to. Oh, so let's talk about leads. One of my favorite subjects. So, you've recently came back to Razor Ridge. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. Um, I started with I started, what were they? The training leads
Training, yeah.
two and
So
a
that
half years ago.
cost you the $12 training
Yeah,
lead.
$12. I sold my first policy to a lead off of a training lead, which I was like, you always remember your first sale, right?
Yeah.
So she was lovely, lovely couple. We weren't able to get her covered, but we were able to get her husband covered. We're coming up on the point where she should be able to get some coverage as well. But I started with some training leads. I dabble with some full price leads. Whenever there was a sale, I love a sale. It's my go-to. You throw me a sale, I'm buying some leads. So it is enticing, just so you know. Throwing that out there, a plug for your sales.
Just in case I forget. Yeah.
Just in case you forgot. So I I worked those, and then when I transitioned into full-time, I was supplemented with I'd buy a batch of leads at a time, so maybe like 15 or so, but then I'd buy my standard analog leads. So I was working both. The thing I like about the digital leads is they may not close right away, but you may have 6 months down the road they call you out of the blue because you had a really great conversation, but their timing wasn't right at the moment. One of my biggest client cases, I had a $10,000 APV from a client, happened 6 months later off of, it's from the DFY program. Eventually, I'll transition into that. But he called me later and he said, hey, sorry it didn't work out. We wrote applications and he never signed them. So something came up in the background and he wouldn't tell me what it was, but he called me back and we had a good relationship and we ended up writing the policy 6 months later.
Wow.
So
Unreal.
yeah, it
Like,
was
wouldn't it?
lovely.
Would it? Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
didn't see that on my radar. That's
Yeah. If
perfect.
anyone's going to call you 6 months later, I was in the middle of an agency owner run at the time. And I was like, like,
I mean,
I've done something right in life. This
yeah,
is wonderful. So I was doing some full price. And then when the DFY program came out, I did do that exclusively. I think it was around this time last year through the beginning of the year. So I did that for maybe about 4 months or so. And just, it was a lot of unpredictability in my world. And I couldn't handle the unpredictability of it anymore. And since then, I have honestly not done a lot with Razor in the past, I'd say 8 months or so. I would still supplement kind of here or there, but it wasn't until the last month that I started buying again.
yeah. I mean, it's a common theme, and I'll touch on that now. Actually, I think it's a good segue. So, for those who are watching, and you've obviously heard Lauren talk about the DFY program, that was a program that Razor ran probably like it's closed now, but it was probably for about 1 or 2 years where we would run or manage advertising accounts for agents directly. So instead of buying leads from us, we would generate the leads in your specific Google account or Facebook account, TikTok account, etc. Plenty of issues with that process. From my perspective, it, it's not very scalable, and actually it's a lot of time that's required, intensive. And if it's not priced right, you're just not going to get the right type of person who can manage all of that workload. So I made the decision earlier this year, October this year, to shut it down. So it's actually fully closed. There's no one in DFI. It's not here anymore. Just in case people are wondering what that is or was. But what you're saying as well, Lauren, is pretty typical of the experience of many people more recently. People use Razor Ridge as their own lead source for plenty of maybe a year or two. And then we kind of lost our way. I'm happy to admit that. I'm very open and honest about it. But certainly since, July and the July, August, I've made it my main operative is just to make sure we have the best quality leads possible. Because if we have good leads, people will come at the end of the day, and that looks like that's what's happening. So talk to me about, obviously, what made you want to come back to Razor, because I don't think I actually spoke to you at all. So I'm interested to find out, like, who directed you, or what did you see, or what were you hearing, or were you just like, I'm going to try it out again?
Yeah, so I was kind of you go through these spells where you're like, okay, the leads are an ebb and flow, right? So every lead type, it doesn't matter what type it is. There are months where they are just gold and you just can't stop winning. And then there are months where you can't win anything.
Anything?
It's just part of the process. And that's why I always have had two different types of leads coming in, right? So like when one is hot, one is not, like you try to keep that balance going. And I was working the most expensive lead type that I could buy. At almost $80 a lead, and it was expensive, and they were good and I was closing on them, but I wasn't getting the return on investment like I knew I could get on something that was a little bit less expensive.
Yeah.
I had dabbled in some other digital lead sources through our company, and I didn't have a large enough sample size, and it's really hard to come to conclusions on small sample sizes, but I did. And I'm like, okay, this isn't working. But I tried it, and like I got, I tried some digital leads. I got like 5 stops in a row, and I'm like, okay, done. Sorry. Sorry. Like I'm not giving you any more time. And then I was looking back into Razor, and Kelly Bush, who is my mentor, had been a long time Razor customer. And I had talked to Jill Johnson as well, who is part of our larger team. Jill gave some recommendations, and I'm like, okay, now's the opportunity. I'm going to try it again. I saw that there was a special, right? 375 for your first 15 leads. And I'm like, okay, well, what do I have to lose, right? It's a good deal. If nothing else, I love a sale. And that's really kind of what started it. And then so I bought the standard. That was my first batch. And then with the Black Friday sale, I bought another batch right before the holiday because I didn't know the sale was coming. And then the sale came. And then I was like, okay, let me try the premiums because I had only worked the standard. So then I went into some premiums. So that's kind of what triggered me to come back. So I've really only bought 3 lead orders so far, but I'm like, I was on a call the other night, which I think is what triggered this call. I was just in our workroom talking with some agents because I was dialing clients and we were writing applications on the phone live. They're like, "Oh my gosh, what leads are you working?" I'm like, "Well, I have to tell you." So we went through this whole tangent about Razor and how I found that it's really, I think, worlds above where it was the last time I was, buying leads here. So yeah, it was phenomenal. So and I was like, "Go get the deal. It's only 375." I don't know if you saw an influx that night, but I've got some responses from some agents. They're like, "Oh my gosh, we just went and bought them." And I was like, "Great,
Good.
good for you."
Yeah. Okay. Now that's interesting, and it's good you've touched on that because firstly, interest and transparency is always good to talk about where you're at, which is important. But what I'm hearing and what not just you from a lot of other agents as well is the fact that you're just able to get that sort of resolution that you need on the phone with the leads that we're generating right now. And that's important, right? There's no point having all these great, bells and whistles on your leads if you're not able to talk to any of them. So even just being able to get engaged, and then when you do engage, I'm sure and I'm pretty confident that when you are speaking to them, one, they know that you're expecting them to, they know why they're there, and the three, they're probably looking to do something. And now it's just a case of agent skill and then moving them in the right product to then obviously get the sale.
Yeah.
Am I right in what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. So I pulled some numbers before I jumped on this call today. Yeah, I didn't like go. I didn't do a deep dive, but I have some very very superficial numbers. So just of the batches I bought within the last week and a half, I have a 70% contact rate on them. So now that may be via text or phone. So I kind of lumped those all together and I didn't set appointments on all of those. Some of them were still in the texting phase where it like drops off for a little bit and, got to send a meme to get them back. Like, where'd you go? I've got all these Christmas memes right now. Like, please, like, don't get tangled up in the mess. So the, 70% is huge, like, just absolutely huge. Just so if I can have a conversation or a text conversation or have some like 70% of my leads engaged, I mean, I think that's just an unbelievable number. I don't know if you have statistics on like what your leads typically do. I don't know if anybody runs those for you, but to me, 70% is phenomenal.
Yeah. So I don't have the numbers, but for the last month and a half, it's been one of my main jobs for myself is to improve that contact rate because I knew that ultimately any lead source can be good, potentially, right? But they're only as good as the people you speak to. And so what I knew was that the contact rate can ebb and flow as well if you don't try and force that contact rate to happen, if that makes sense. And so what I've been doing from the ads to the landing page to the thank you page to even the texting that we sent over to Symmetry, it's all aligned to ensure that that person will pick up the phone, right? And so it's been like a month and a half of work and testing and understanding what's working and what's not working. But the idea was to get about a 70 to 80% resolution on your leads, because again, that means if you think of a cost per lead is a number, and this is probably going out of scope of what most people would think. But if you have a lead that costs $10, but you can only speak to one of them and you order 10, it's really $100 it's costing you for a conversation.
Right.
Now,
Yep.
if you have a lead that costs $20 and you can speak to 80 of them, then it's like $32 per conversation. And so although this one looks cheaper, the reality is you're having more conversations and more opportunity to close more deals. And so again, looking at our products of leads, some may say, oh, they're priced. Some may be too expensive. I mean, we've got good pricing across all our products now. But if you go to premium, if you go to MP, if you go to standard, they're all doing the same thing. It's just about, what more do you want from your lead in terms of when you communicate with them. So I'm glad you're seeing and feeling the difference, because that means that the work that I've been doing behind the scenes is definitely working. And you're not the first person to say that. So it's good. It's good that it's consistent across the board.
Yeah, and I would say that's the same. I don't think there's a higher contact rate, on standard versus premium. I think it's the same, across the board is my experience. I've sold both of them, in the last week, so I mean, from that standpoint, I don't really care. I just, it was enticing to me to know that they were maybe a little bit more financially qualified and we weren't working with a $20 budget. But I've also sold just as many standard leads as I have of the premium, so I don't have enough data to figure out, like, you know, should I stick one way or another? Like I said, small sample size, but it's one of those things where it's enough that I'm gonna keep buying them, so I can get more data to see, kinda where that lies, but right now I'm closing both the standard and the premium, but I have not done any of the mortgage protection yet.
Awesome. Now that's good to hear. So talk to me about what does that look like in terms of numbers, in terms of AP? You've done a couple orders on standard. I think you've done one order, which is almost complete now on your premium. What sort of AP are we talking, or APB, sorry, in terms of the sales so far?
Yeah, so I'm really not the greatest at tracking numbers. In the last week, I wrote about 7,000 in the last week on those leads. So I've had some no-show appointments. I would say that I've had my highest appointment set rate last week than I've had in the last month and a half. And I don't think it's because I'm working anymore. I think it's because I'm having more contacts. Now, obviously, I had some no shows, but the more appointments you set, the more you're going to sit ultimately. And I told you I kind of moved away from one of those lead types because of the cost of them. I wasn't talking to enough people.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, even at the premium price point, I'm still having way more conversations with people, setting more appointments and having more opportunities. And one thing that I've noticed too that I never noticed before with razor leads is the referrals. So I had a lady last night, we wrote an IUL, and she said, "Well, don't forget about my 3 kids." We hadn't even gotten to the point of talking about referrals, and she's like, "Here's their phone number." She's, like, texting them to me as we're writing the application with their full names, and then she called them while we were on the phone and said, "Hey, she's gonna be calling you. I need you to pick up your phone and get a policy." And I'm like, "Okay." So my day today looks wonderful, after that, application. It was only, I think it was like 593 was the AP on it. So it wasn't massive, but if I get her 3 adult kids on top of it as well, right?
Yeah,
The
exactly.
return on that, is wonderful.
Exactly. No, I love that. I love that. Sounds like we're hitting the mark with a lot of things, which is good to hear.
Yeah.
So talk to me a bit more about your process. Now, people who watch this podcast, they love learning about like how you handle as an agent new leads coming in. What do you say? You're talking about memes. That's a good one. I think a lot of people probably don't use memes. So talk to me about your process. How do you engage initially, but also how do you re-engage as well if someone goes dead or cold?
Yeah, so I use a very simple script. It's a script from Grant Lieber that I picked up a long while ago. It's like 4 text messages to an appointment. It is simple. We don't get in the weeds with asking too many questions. The goal is to get them on the phone. I have discovered that these leads they're very, very quick to text me right away. So instead of picking up the phone and calling them, I'm going to go through my 3 text messages to get them to appointment. And most of them are setting appointments. So meet them where they're at, let them schedule through text first versus blowing up their phones. Now, if they don't respond to me, obviously that's a different story. And then I'm going to pick up the phone and start calling them.
Yeah.
But I'm letting them kind of get to the point where they're comfortable, they're texting only, we get to the phone call, and then at that point, I don't even really know what they're looking for, right? It's so basic, like, how old are you? Do you smoke? Do you have any major medical? I don't ask about prescriptions. I don't ask details. They could tell me they just had a heart transplant. I was like, cool. How much are you looking for? We just acknowledge, move on.
Basic. Yeah. Yeah.
Very, very basic. When I first started, I think I got myself in the weeds with trying to do too much over text. And sometimes it doesn't come across the same. Sometimes people get nervous and they're like, I don't want to tell you about all these things that I have wrong. But if you can have a conversation with a person as a human being and say, I'm just here to help you, like the more you tell me, the easier this will be for both of us. So I have really I follow it to a T. I added it into my templates. So I have templates that go out and it's like, hey, what works best for you, morning, afternoon, or evening? We set an appointment and then I do most of the stuff over the phone. So I don't text quotes. I don't do any of that. I'm like, if you can't give me 5 minutes, then you probably don't really want a policy.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just be honest. Now, do I miss a couple here and there? Kristen Mothershead probably picks those up because she's really good at like long term, like
Look,
follow up. For me, that's just not like if we're not doing like the here and now, I would say my long term follow up is not as good as some other agents.
okay.
But I'm a little bit better at like, okay, let's just finish this right now and get this completed and then, following up later on. But the memes, if I don't hear from somebody even within a few weeks, I'll send a meme. And I don't send any text with it. I just send a meme because if they don't know who I am, it triggers them to ask me, who is this? Because if they've
Yeah.
already deleted all my text messages, they have no idea who's sending them a meme. So I used a gingerbread one last week. I don't even remember what it said. Something about like it was like a gingerbread man with like a broken leg, like laying on the ground. Like it was insane. I did not come up with it. I cannot take credit for that. But I sent it out and I got 2 appointments off of it of people who had never engaged.
Amazing.
One of them was like, "Who is this?" Like, "Hey, I'm Lauren. Like, I'm just getting back to you. It looks like you're looking for some life insurance. Like, I haven't heard back. Is this still important to you?" And she said, "Yes." And I'm like, "Okay, great." Like, she just I don't know, for whatever reason, the gingerbread man got her. Uh,
It's
but
such a strange thing, isn't it?
humanizing yourself is important and just making sure people realize that you're not a robot, you're not some chat bot, like you truly just are a human being. And I don't think a lot of industries are sending memes. I have seen myself, like a lot of industries are sending more, I would say, conversational text. I think the texting world has gotten a lot better. I mean, we all get text messages for things that we sign up for or are part of, but nobody's sending memes. And I think memes are really what differentiate being a real person because maybe it's not professional in some industries, but if I want to work with somebody, I want to work with a real human being who has a sense of humor. And if they don't have a sense of humor and, it's silly, but I've had some good engagement from it, so
That's perfect. It's similar to Trevor Williams. I had a podcast with him recently. Similar vibe where you just try and find something either to make them laugh or a point of connection and then double down on it. And everyone likes somebody who can make them laugh, right? Most people, if they're in a friendship group, they have that one person that's just a joker, that's always making people smile, make people laugh. And if you can be that as the agent, it also separates you from all the other agents who potentially might be contacting them as well, who might be a bit stiff, a bit rigid. A bit of humor can definitely go a long way. So before we wrap up, I really wanted to dive into a bit more of the four texts. So people who are watching are very clear on the structure. The first text is the age. The second is how old are you? Oh, sorry. How old are you? Do you smoke? The third is have you had any medical issues? And then you try and book a call.
yeah, so the exact string is the first one is age and tobacco use. I show that you're 54 and a non-smoker, is that right?
Yeah.
The second one is, obviously they're gonna say yes or no. They're gonna tell you, like, if the age is wrong. Um, the second one is, "Perfect, thanks for confirming. Do you have any health conditions like blood pressure, diabetes, heart conditions?" They're gonna answer however they answer. I don't care what the answer is. Most of the time, they're gonna say no, and there's actually something else, right? But we find that out over the phone. After that, perfect. How much coverage are you looking for? They're going to give you either I don't know, that's why I'm calling you, or they're going to give you a very specific amount. Next is, are you looking to cover you or anybody else? So just trying to figure out if we're talking to just that person or it's me and my husband or me and my kids or who the people are that we're actually covering. I don't even ask too many details after that. If they say me and my husband, I don't go into it. I just don't go into it. I'm like, great. Like, just acknowledge, like, yep, great, got it. And then that's all the info I need to work on some options. There's a few different ways we can go to get your family protected. Wanted to jump on a quick call and show you what you qualify for. Is it better for morning, afternoon, or evening? They tell me, we set the appointment. So it's actually 5 text messages. The first three are very short, and then that last one is scheduling.
Yeah, fair. That's brilliant. I appreciate you sharing it with everyone who's watching. And once again, thank you for joining me on the podcast. Really love hearing that one, you're working on leads again, which is nice to hear. But two, they're hitting the mark with what your expectations are, maybe even exceeding your expectations. And three, they're making money from them as well. So they're all the three important things for us to be successful as a lead provider and a partner to you guys, but also you guys to be successful for yourselves, your families, and your agencies too. So thank you once again for joining.
Yeah.
And
For
yeah,
having
look
me.
and chat to you very soon, I'm sure.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.